Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us this evening for Lobby Lead Training. In this lesson, we're going to go into detail about the special role of a lobby meeting leader, right? The leader is the person that makes sure that all of our teams go into the meeting with a plan and that everyone's knowing how to work together to ensure that we have successful meetings that really are building the political will for climate solutions. Now, you may be listening to a recording of this lesson because you are in district and maybe you're in the middle of the spring and you're going to be lobbying and this is a recording, or you might be listening to a recording as you're heading to Washington, D.C. And no matter the case, it doesn't matter. You are going to really follow a lot of the same best practices that we're going to share with you on this call tonight. And so we appreciate you guys being here and glad to have everyone on. That's me on the screen. My name is Ricky Bradley. I'm one of the CCL IT directors, and I'm also the Dallas, Texas group leader here in the North Dallas area, chapter number 42. I've been with CCL since 2012.
Right on. And that's me here also in Dallas. I think I had Ricky beat by maybe only a couple of chapters. Started up in northern Minnesota with a small rural town of Bemidji as one of the first CCL groups. But now I'm down here in Texas, and Brett Cease, Director of Volunteer Education and Engagement. And I am looking forward to getting everyone set up for our big conference in literally T-minus 10 days as of today. So I'll kick it back to you, Ricky, to get us going.
Oh, great. So thanks, Brett. So this lesson, again, is Lobby Lead Training. It's really the fifth in a series of lobby webinars that you can watch at any time. Again, it doesn't matter if you're going in district lobbying or lobbying in D.C. These are relevant to either situation. But if you are, you may want to go back and look at the previous lobbying webinars that we've prepared for you to get ready for a meeting with a member of Congress. And our first one, our Lobbying 101 webinar, is really about citizen advocacy. What does it mean to be a citizen advocate? What's our most powerful weapon that we have at our disposal? Hint, the most powerful weapon we have is information on how our policy will impact a member's district or state. That's the most powerful thing that we have at our disposal. And we talk about building relationships in Lobbying 101 as well. Lobbying 201, we talk about, what do you need to do to research, get prepared? What are all the tools that we have available for citizen advocates to get prepared for a meeting with their member of Congress? In Lobbying 301, we answer the question, what does a meeting with a member of Congress sound like? Really great lesson for folks for the first time you're going to be lobbying, to hear how it flows and how it progresses from beginning to end. In Lobbying 401, we talked about advanced lobbying, how to handle difficult situations, how to get meetings back on track, and how to make sure you're asking questions and all the types of questions you should be asking to make sure that you're really capturing what the member of Congress, the staffer, is trying to say. So we've got a lot of material to cover. Let's go ahead and kick things off with Brett.
Great. Well, thanks, Ricky. And really the biggest thing that we want to start with beyond a quick review of where we've been is just saying thank you. Leadership is so successful and so essential, rather, that we can't function successfully as a group and an organization without it. And yet we know it's time consuming, and sometimes, getting out of our comfort zone can be uncomfortable. So you as the team lead and being willing to put yourself out there on the line enables things to go well in our lobby meetings and to really help create the conditions for the greatest degree of success possible. So really tonight's lesson, we hope that you come out and come away from this discussion feeling satisfied and empowered in your meetings, whether you are able to successfully lobby your member of Congress to join the Climate Solutions Caucus or support or sponsor fee and dividend outright for really doing the right thing. And we're grateful for you putting the time into it to make that possible. You're truly essential people, and we couldn't do it without you. Also, I think it's really important just to start, like Ricky said, with acknowledging that a lot of us feel nervous going into our meetings, even if we've done this for 10 years now. And that's a normal feeling. Remember, our advantage is that we are citizens. We're Citizens Climate Lobby, and we're not professional lobbyists. So keep telling yourself that. And although we want you to be professional, you don't have to actually be a professional lobbyist. In fact, that's not to our advantage. And this is as true here in the US as it is in Canada or our volunteers in Australia or anywhere else around the world. The important thing is just to really relax and to be yourself. Do whatever helps you get to that place ahead of the meetings, and really remember that part of what sets CCL apart in the eyes of congressional offices is that we are ordinary people who care specifically about something and accept that there's going to be mistakes too. You'll make mistakes, your teammates will. There'll be things that you wish you had said or that you hadn't said or that could have been said better. And we'll show you how to handle these situations that might be difficult or challenging, but the important thing is to keep moving on, right? We're there to build relationships. And so be human and embrace whatever happens. I'll pass it back to you, Ricky.
So in a short amount of time that you're in an actual meeting with a member of Congress, it may be 15 minutes, likely to be longer for a staffer, maybe 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. But how you facilitate the meeting obviously is very important. But let's step back and consider the bigger picture for just a moment here. And the bigger picture is this: meeting leaders, just like our group leaders in our local chapters, are well positioned to nurture and empower others. And in fact, that's the most important role of a meeting leader, is to make sure that other people are coming to the front, and to participate. So make it one of your goals to mentor or to nurture the lobby team, so people are able to build their capacity for this work. The more people we can build with this capacity, the more people we can train how to do this, the better for us, right? So how does a meeting lead help others grow, and how do you empower them? And here's the key. The best leaders show faith in those around them, and that's what we're asking you to do. Having faith in others means you know that there are going to be some coachable moments. Brett mentioned it's totally fine. To feel empowered, people need to be put in situations where they can both succeed and fail, because that's how we learn. We learn from our mistakes. Your role is to make everyone around you better. Now, you can do this during the planning session, during your practice sessions. You can do this during the meeting. You can do this after the meeting. But that's the most important role for a meeting leader. So let's talk about advanced planning and how you can empower your team during this stage. Advanced planning is simply what it says. It's the time you plan in advance of a meeting. First, one really important step to know here. If you're a meeting leader, when you receive your schedule, please call the office and verify both the building and the room number. We don't want to miss a meeting by going to the wrong place. If there's been a change, make sure you let everyone know.
The important thing after you've verified an actual kind of location is to coordinate a time ahead of time to do advanced planning with your team. And one of the things that we've noticed this year that we really wanted to highlight that's going to be new and is based on feedback from y'all from prior years is that we're actually providing clear designated space throughout Saturday to make sure that you have as much time and have as much ease in scheduling as possible. So on Saturday, the day before the whole festivities really kick off, it's going to be up to you. But we have 4 rooms that are featured throughout the Omni Showroom. This is the map there on the right side featuring the 4 locations. We've got the Council, Cabinet, and Senate rooms open on the right-hand side if you go in from the lobby until 9, and then the Hampton room on the left-hand side from the lobby until 7. And so those are meeting rooms set aside and made available for lobby teams to use to practice. And additionally, this year, we're also making sure that Monday night, the program ends at 6:35 so that teams can meet throughout the rest of the evening wherever they can find space to really have a proper amount of time to prepare. You'll also get your schedules and find out if you're the lead for any of the meetings by the Thursday before the conference. So if you're listening tonight, that's literally a week from today. And if you contact people right away, you might be able to even set up a time for a conference call before people head to DC to get the discussion rolling and really find a time that works for everyone to practice. At the conference, we also recommend, if any of these other options aren't available, that you can also use any of the meal times on Sunday or Monday. And it might even be possible, although we don't recommend it, to use time on Tuesday if you just are slammed, you can't find any other open window. But it's riskier just since lobby schedules can change and people are already probably committed throughout the rest of the day. The important thing also to remember is that if you can't find a time that works for most people, it's important to go ahead and plan. It might not be perfect, but it's still going to make a difference to your team, and you can always fill in that missing person separately. So with all of the bios and the meeting plans that are sent ahead of time, if someone can't make the planning session, just know and rest assured they'll have plenty of information. And I'll pass it back over to you, Ricky.
Great, thanks, Brett. So let's review a couple of ideas for connecting and coordinating with your team. First of all, there's good old email, right? So you get your meeting schedule, you notice that you're the lobby lead, go ahead and send an email out to the team. Or call to introduce yourself. Let them know that you're the leader for that meeting. It helps you as well, because if you don't know the volunteer at that moment, you can spend a few minutes getting to know them, and taking that time just to get to know them a little bit really is going to help you develop the confidence in them, and it's going to help you to be able to figure out what they can and cannot do during the meeting and what they might need coaching for prior to the meeting. Ask your folks to choose from a few times or a few options for a planning meeting, and Brett just went over the times. I think the great thing is that Monday night session that we'll have, where folks can get together, and on Saturday as well. Talk to them about the roles, especially if they're new. What roles would they prefer to fill? If they're new, it's a good time to explain the roles to them, an important speech role. And we've been through those in our previous lobbying webinars. Confirm that they received their scheduled bios and meeting plans. Make sure they got everything. So that's a very important step as well. And ask them to review the information before your planning session, so to go through it all. And a lot of teams have already gotten together and are putting together meeting plans, liaisons and group leaders and stuff. So you'll have those as well.
Perfect. And, continuing on this theme of suggestions for the planning session, one of the other big things that we want to think about is, what should we do in a planning session? When you actually get people together, what are we actually going to talk about? So here's some situations for how an ideal format might run. But again, we realize that many of us are going to be scrambling to get ready, so any good contact ahead of time is a good thing. So if there's a meeting plan submitted, which hopefully there will be, we've been pushing that for all liaisons to get ahead of time, review that meeting plan with everyone. Make sure that everyone's had a chance to see what the actual liaison, the person on the ground developing that relationship, recommends, especially if they aren't going to be in DC. And then from there, it's really important to discuss the meeting plan strategy, or create one from the plan to the actual meeting for DC, right? So it's going to be key to review the concept of not only the primary ask that we have, but also what you think as a team the most appropriate and specific supporting ask might be to move that member further down the ladder of climate advocacy, and when you would use it in the meeting. We use supporting asks, as a quick reminder, when we've been already turned down by a primary ask. And if it's not already specified in that meeting plan, then helping the team settle on the supporting ask, or 2 or 3 at most, depending on how much time the meeting might have, is really key to process throughout that planning session. As you lead, you want to make sure to also facilitate and cue and remind the whole kind of team what transitions you might be providing, whether they be verbally or with body language. For an example, a verbal cue could sound something like this. Ricky, would you mind telling us here why you are here and what you're asking for? A body language cue could be as simple as turning to look at someone. It's really up to you as the meeting lead to determine during that planning session, and let the team know how you plan to cue them as the lead. If you've practiced well enough, your team might not even need cues at all, too. We're just throwing out simple ways to make sure that the transitions run smoothly, and that people feel prepared to know what to expect as far as what you're communicating. Another thing that's really important to consider is that there are sample meeting outlines on Community, and Ricky can show you where to find those at the end of tonight's call. If you have time to review them ahead with your we recommend that all meeting leads do that. But we also recommend that you review those with your team, and then really go for it in assigning the actual kind of roles. And we discussed those again in greater detail in Lobbying 201, so we won't go into that tonight. But I'll pass it back to you, Ricky, after we kind of stop for questions here.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and stop for questions for just a moment. You'll see on the screen there a little demonstration shows you how to unmute yourself. If you do have a question, please unmute your line by clicking the little microphone symbol in the lower left-hand portion of your screen. We really like to hear questions right now about preparing for your meetings with Congress? You know, like as you as a lead, what questions do you have about, you know, getting your team together and preparing? So tell us your name and where you're joining from, and ask your question.
And you can feel free to use the chat window too.
Okay, well, I think maybe everything
crystal clear so far.
So don't worry about it. But let me just reiterate real quick one point, or one thing that Brett was talking about the meeting plans. So a lot of groups have been working on meeting plans, a lot of liaisons with their, you know, some folks that they know are going to DC based on their previous minutes, previous meetings that they've had with members of Congress. Those will be emailed along with your schedule and your bios next week, towards the end of next week, before you get to DC. So you'll get those in your inbox. And if you do receive a blank one, and that doesn't mean that they haven't been working on them. That just means maybe possibly the liaison and the group leader didn't submit it in time or didn't submit it properly. So if you're from that local area, it might be a good idea to just give a shout out to your liaison and ask them, hey, did you have a meeting plan for this meeting? If you don't get those, just, yeah, keep that in mind. Those meeting plans are fantastic for structuring the meetings. So.
It makes everyone else's life easy. And I hear someone else.
This is Gaylord. Do the participants in a meeting get any materials in advance on this that tells them the general structure of the meeting, the roles, and so forth? Or if they're a first timer, we really have to educate them from scratch?
That's a great question, Gaylord. So there's a couple things that they're on CCL Community, and I'll demonstrate this at the end. If you'll remind me, we're going to show where some things are, some resources on CCL Community. But one of the things is like a meeting outline, yes, and it'll show them, okay, this is the general structure of a meeting. But you know, keep in mind that every meeting is different, right? And especially if it's a 5th or 6th meeting with the same person, you know, you may not go through the same here's why I'm here thing. They may know why you're there. But yeah, in general, there is an outline. And, you know, if it's a new person, it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
So are the new people going to be given that link to look at before they get to DC? Or do they get any written instructions or email instructions, or is it up to the lead to really teach them everything?
Well, everyone's been invited, you know, to the webinars, to the trainings, to everyone who's signed up for lobbying has also sent the link to our Washington, D.C. Lobby Day Toolkit, which has links to this outline or to all the information that folks may need. The difficult part there, Gaylord, is knowing, yeah, who has prepared ahead of time and who hasn't. I guess it's going to be difficult to know that until you actually have that conversation with them. Does that help?
And I think, you know, just bouncing off of what Ricky's saying there, that was kind of the whole encouragement that we had of, as meeting lead, when you find out on Thursday which groups you might be in charge of, using that day or Friday to go through your call list of the other participants and just having a one-on-one to make sure you understand where they're coming from. You know, knowing if they are first timer, if they have used the resources, and then having, you know, at least a couple of days ahead of when you might even have a chance to meet as a group to have them run through and do their own homework, so you don't have to spend valuable time as a whole meeting going through that.
Great and let me just add one other thing to that, because I think it's something we don't have anywhere in these webinars. Maybe it makes sense to include it in the future. But another thing you can do is you can prepare your aide or your member of Congress for the meeting by sending them your agenda and what you want to talk about. Especially if you want to cover a study. Like, for example, with my member of Congress, we're going to be going over the Treasury's new working paper from the Office of Tax Analysis. And so I'm going to send that to them ahead of time and say, hey, look at this. And that just helps the meeting, because then you can really get into their thoughts, because they've had time to look at the information ahead of time. So as a lead as well, you probably want to make sure not only that your team is prepared, but also that the person you're meeting with is prepared to discuss what you're there to talk about. And so you can send them copies of the REMI report or the summary, if that's what you want to talk about, or maybe the household impact study. Send that to them for your district. Say, hey, here's what we're going to discuss. We'd love to get your thoughts on this. So a couple of different things you could do there.
I love that, Ricky. I think we should definitely include that. I think that's what they call in the education world priming your students. So making sure that they actually have time before the meeting to do their homework is absolutely essential and a good communicative role for the leader. Any other questions, I guess, for this section? We'll have time at the end as well. So at this point, we're about halfway through. Wonderful. Well, feel free to interrupt me here, but for now, what I'm going to do is jump into the second half, and we're going to talk about the pre-meeting huddle. So from there, here is kind of our next step. So ask everyone on the team to be at that meeting location 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time. It's really important that you're going to be there early and you're showing that you're prompt and that you value your actual time with the member or the staff. And you yourself should be prepared to meet in the hall, outside the office, or wherever the predetermined location might be for your team at that point, if not even a little earlier. Here's some other things that you should review in that pre-meeting huddle. You should make sure to talk about roles one last time and assign or reassign as needed. You should make sure to just remind everyone on the team of the goals and the primary takeaway for what you're meeting with. You should make sure to talk and establish, again, the primary and supporting asks that you hope to bring up during the meeting. And also to remember everyone to watch for the clues or the cues and listen for those body language moments and really being interpersonally aware, as we've talked about in prior webinars. A little later on in that lesson, tonight actually, we're going to talk a little bit more about what to do if you have a constituent call-in for your meeting. But this is probably also a really good time to give them a call ahead of time to check in, make sure that they're ready to join by phone. And then really what we want you to do is walk in early. Try not to show up too much more than 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, just so you're not clustering in the office that much earlier. But we do want to have kind of a chance to show up and show that you value the meeting, that you're timely. And again, above all, just help your whole crew feel relaxed and ready to have fun and be present to that meeting. So let's actually talk next about what a meeting leader does during the meeting after we've talked through the huddle. So the meeting leader, and we've gone through all these roles before, but this will be the one reminder that we have tonight, is like a conductor. That's really the helpful metaphor we like to pass on. The leader is there to manage the meeting, not to dominate. This means the leader is not necessarily the one that's going to be emerging as the one who's talked the most, but instead, the one who's really in charge of those transitions, the points, between when we're crescendoing and decrescendoing, if you will, between speakers, between roles, getting the conversation back on track, wrapping things up, cueing people in and out, and really reading that dynamic of the whole group whenever they're talking too long even. If you're present, the leader also ensures that the constituents and the liaison especially are heard from. If we have a meeting where we don't have the whole group being those constituents or the liaison, we want to make sure that those voices are featured prominently above others. The leader should also be able to understand the meeting situation and to respond accordingly. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But first, let's actually demonstrate what we mean by transitioning between different parts of the meeting, if that's all right with you, Ricky.
Absolutely. All right. So before Brett and I demonstrate a couple of examples, there's something important to understand. And that is this, that each meeting is different, and each dynamic and each situation is different. Each member of Congress is different, and each staffer is different. So proceed in a way that's comfortable and appropriate for your situation. We do a lot of preparation ahead of time, but we don't want people going on autopilot and being robotic and just going through an agenda. Be able to adapt to the situation that you've got. So I'm going to start off by demonstrating how a leader might do a transition from, say, the discussion part of the meeting to the point where we realize that our time is drawing to an end. And really what we want to do there is to recap and to make sure we have a clear understanding of why if they can't support our proposal or introduce it, why not? And so that might sound like this. Congressman, I see that we're nearing the end of our time with you today, so I wanted to recap and clarify our understanding of the obstacles preventing you from supporting this proposal. That's a good way to wrap up the meeting, to get it set up to where you're pulling things together at the end, but asking that all important question to make sure that we don't leave that room without knowing what are the obstacles, or maybe an agreement that they'll get back to us with what the obstacles are.
Great. And circling even kind of a little bit earlier in the meeting, one example at least that has been effective in showing how you can transition from appreciation at the beginning to stating our purpose and cutting right to the chase is something like this. Congresswoman, I want to thank you for your recent efforts to protect citizens from identity theft. That's a real important issue for me. But today, we've come to discuss how we can partner with your office to create the political will for a livable world.
But maybe it's your fourth meeting with your member of Congress or staffer, right? In this situation, they probably know why we are there. Now, if that's the case, you might skip the purpose and move right from your appreciation into the ask, right? Because they already know the purpose. They already know exactly why we're there. So maybe that sounds something like this. Congressman, I want to thank you for your recent vote acknowledging climate change. We're here today to talk about solutions and to ask you to introduce a bill that puts a steadily rising fee on carbon and returns the net revenue back to American households. Are you ready to support such a proposal?
I love that, Ricky. And I think, even building off of that, another way we talked a lot about cues to really kind of verbally signal that transition is just to be explicit and upfront with it. And an example that might go well that sounds something like this, Congresswoman, I want to thank you for your recent efforts to protect citizens from identity theft. That's a real important issue to me. But we are here to talk about a different topic. So Ricky, why don't you take it away and tell us more about why we're here today and what we're seeking. Notice in this example, I explicitly transitioned to Ricky with a verbal cue and empowered him to take it there and identified kind of the primary ask in the process.
Yeah, and I think to Gaylord's question earlier, when you have newer folks, maybe in your meeting, you might want to do those very explicit transitions like that, and to say, okay, I'm going to call your name, and I'm going to say, hey, John is going to tell you why we're here today, or John's going to lead off with our questions today, or that kind of thing. I think it's really important for new folks to do that. All right, so a lead also needs to bring the meeting back when it gets off target or when it veers off course. Now, in Lobbying 401, we reviewed several examples of how to get a meeting back on track. And I encourage everyone who's going to think that they're going to be a leader in a meeting to watch that lesson, to review it, or to listen to it on iTunes. We'll demonstrate one situation for you now. In this example, Brett will play the member of Congress or the staffer who goes off topic by discussing nuclear energy. And I will play the leader who acknowledges his comment and immediately circles back to why we're there.
All right, let's take it away. Nuclear has to be a part of the conversation, Ricky. It must be on the table or I'm not interested.
That's interesting, Congressman. As an organization, we don't take a position on nuclear one way or the other. We take a position on one thing, and that's having the burning of fossil fuels pay their true cost to society and letting the market determine, which energy source is viable or not. There's economists that tell us that if we were to pass carbon fee and dividend, that the percentage of nuclear in our energy mix stays about the same as it is now. Would you like to hear more about that?
I love that, and I really love how you wove in what we talked about in 301 and 401 with really posing an invitational question rather than assuming to launch right into the next step for information. Let's pivot to talking about situational awareness like that. So as a meeting leader, you're going to do a lot of advanced planning and preparation, right? That's what we're doing tonight, and it's really important. But we can't let our plans and preparations go on autopilot, like Ricky mentioned. We practice ahead of time so that when things arise that we don't expect and when scenarios crop up that we're not anticipating, we're ready as well. And that's why we always need to be focused on what's actually being said in that moment and responding to what we're actually hearing, not what we expect or think we're about to hear. So as the meeting leader, you should recognize that when it might be appropriate, it's important to diverge from your plan. And we refer to this as situational awareness. And it's entirely up to you and your judgment, and we fully trust you to execute that when needed. It's the ability to perceive and understand what is happening in the moment and be able in that situation then to react to the challenges as they happen. And I think one of the key traits of a strong meeting lead is good situational awareness, right? It means that you're not only listening to the words, you're not only following the script, but you're also, paying attention to the tone of voice or, body language as well. And one of the benefits of having a team is that if you don't pick up on a particular cue from your member of Congress or the staffer, one of your other fellow lobbyists probably will. And they can then ask a follow-up question or redirect a derailed conversation, you name it, right? You're working together as a team and you're really practicing situational awareness as something that we really want to emphasize as we meet with members of Congress or their staff.
Another situation you want to look out for as a meeting lead is the silent constituent, right? Now, not the silent lobby team member. So, right, I'm in Texas, but I might participate in a meeting in Idaho. Well, if I'm being quiet, unless it's really odd or awkward, you probably want to get me to participate. But if there are other people from Idaho in the meeting and they're being quiet, that's who you need to make sure is participating. And so there's if they're in DC or if they're going to a district meeting, they've probably prepared ahead of time and they have something to say. So you could do a simple verbal cue and just say, hey, Ricky, or I wouldn't say that because that's me. I'd like to pause for a moment and see if there's anything you'd like to add at this point, and just really cue them to say what they have to say. That member of Congress wants to hear, or that staffer wants to hear from constituents. So make sure that they're participating. Now, what if someone on the team says something that's just flat out wrong? What should we do at this point? Well, I would say first thing, and just like we would do with a member of Congress or a staffer, we would not correct them, right? Try to say something like this. If I may, let me add to what Ricky was saying, right? And then you can get your point in there or something that you thought maybe that was left out. So try not to correct people. Your team will appreciate you for not correcting them or pointing out they forgot something. What could you do in this situation if you think about a CCL volunteer that gets agitated or angry during a meeting, right? So this isn't common, but it has happened. So be prepared for it. Stay calm yourself. If everyone gets upset, it could become a bad situation. So we're trusting leaders to stay calm. Here's how it could play out. Brett's going to play the angry volunteer.
Oh, I get all the fun roles. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's do something like this. It's you guys in Congress who are stalling and making this worse. Why don't you get a backbone and actually deliver on climate?
Well, that felt good, I'm sure, Brett. All right. So as a leader, I would say, Congressman, we're obviously very passionate people, and we're working very hard to try to get something done in time. You were just saying that you don't think that remaining in the Paris Climate Agreement would be effective. Could we tell you what we've learned about the effectiveness of carbon fee and dividend?
Wow. That was very smooth, Ricky. I'm going to repeat that one a couple of times here before jumping into meetings. So other considerations just to throw out there is especially related to size of teams because they're going to vary from meeting to meeting. And if there's just 2 or 3 of you, then each person is obviously going to also have to fill more than one role. However, as we've been growing so rapidly throughout the country, it's much more likely this year that you're going to actually lobby with a larger group of people and that everyone's going to have a specific role. Large groups may actually mean that some folks don't even have to speak much more beyond introductions or have a formal role beyond perhaps being the leaver at the end, for example. But as the leader, you really want to acknowledge and appreciate them for that still. Having additional people in the meeting whose role is looking pleasant and affirming their interest is absolutely essential still, right? And so even if they don't say much, we should value them for being present and really make sure to uplift that. Also, you may run into the situation where someone informs you that they're going to be late. And I think this is really important to think through ahead of time. Coming in late is going to inevitably disrupt that meeting, right? And so the only time that we would recommend you want to volunteer to join a meeting that's already started or in progress is if they're the only constituent. Otherwise, politely thank them for letting you know, explain to them that coming in will disrupt the meeting and that you will fill them in on the meeting otherwise. That's kind of the whole goal. And then the final situation, I think, on these considerations to review is when a volunteer from another region or state shows up for a meeting that they're not scheduled in. And believe it or not, this has happened, and I know I've actually heard from other regional coordinators that this seems to be on the rise with people checking in early this year as well. So first of all, make sure they're not in the wrong place or ditching a meeting that they should be in. And then, given how much time and coordination has been put into the delicate scheduling process, and that others now especially may have wanted to join but weren't able to due to our lobby day filling up earlier than usual this year, we ask that you're going to thank them for their interest and passion, but let them know that we have plenty already and that the scheduling process was set up to structure each meeting fairly. Using that kind of language is really important, and we also want to emphasize that we don't want to overwhelm the office. So, with that in mind, I think one last thing that we want to talk about is moving on to discuss, what you should do immediately following the meeting. So we talked about the pre-huddle, and we had a football team, and now we've got a baseball team on the mound, I guess. We're heavy on the sports analogies tonight. So let's talk about, what should happen immediately afterwards and what situations you should expect, after emerging from the office. In most cases, you're going to have, an hour, maybe 2 even, especially this year with being assigned 3 meetings before your next meeting. So you don't really have to worry about speeding along. If someone has another meeting in 30 minutes, then let them go ahead. But the rest of the team should make sure to spend quality time debriefing. And, a debrief is a short examination. It doesn't have to take, too long, but we want to make sure that you're focusing on a couple of key topics. And those include, getting away from the door outside of the, immediate office that you're emerging from. And then, making sure to talk about what went well and taking the opportunity to nurture team members, especially ones that you saw growth in the meeting, making sure to name that and highlight that and point it out for people to learn from. You want to make sure to also probably start, one natural way that you can begin a debrief that works well for me, ask the note taker to read the notes that they took back, and having that kind of trigger everyone's memory. And then look at the back of the meeting minutes form, and we'll show you what that actually looks and zoom in on that in a bit, and find the section that's titled Important Things to Capture. If there's something missing, this is the time to capture it. As the leader, you are responsible for verifying the plan for following up items. You need to note who's going to do the follow-up, who's going to drop off the thank you card, who's going to file the meeting minutes online and drop them off at the top copy of this form that we'll show you in a little bit. And this year we actually have a couple of options that are new as well. Last year and prior, we only had the reception and the evening back at the Omni Showroom as the location to physically drop off those notes. This year, due to popular demand, volunteers interested in dropping off their completed minute meetings earlier than the evening reception also have the chance to find Dr. Danny Richter in the morning on the Senate side. He'll be in the cafeteria down, below Dirksen and Hart, the one big cafeteria on the Senate side, and you can, drop them off there and then. Or on the afternoon side, since that's when we're doing the majority of our house meetings, in the Rayburn cafeteria. And again, that's in the basement, and he'll be there after 1. So you don't have to track him down if it's hard or if you don't have time. Don't worry, that's just an additional option. But we do ask that you make sure that somebody is in charge of dropping off the physical copy of the meeting minutes by the evening reception back at the Omni Showroom. And I'll pass it back to you, Ricky.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Brett. So let's take a look at the meeting minutes form here for just a moment. So as a meeting lead, you're obviously going to assign the role for someone to take notes during the meeting, and everyone's going to get a copy of this form in their, there you go, or go back one more. Everyone's going to get a copy of this form in their packet in DC, the Congressional Meeting Minutes form. And, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a bunch of fields to fill out there, and what kind of meeting it was, the date and the time and all that stuff. But I do want to point out a couple of important things on the form. First, notice that there's an area for you to enter the meeting number. Now, your meeting number will be on the schedule. So when you get your schedule, it'll say, oh, I'm meeting with Senator Cornyn. Here's the meeting ID. You want to make sure that meeting ID is captured on the meeting minutes form. And why is that important? Here's the really cool thing. Once you submit the meeting minutes, or the person who's submitting the meeting minutes does so, every person in that meeting is going to get an email with those notes. So it's a good opportunity for everyone to see and make sure that everything was captured. So getting that meeting ID on the meeting minutes form is very important. The other thing I want to just point out and just reiterate, and we talk about this all the time, but I don't think you can say it enough, is that our meeting minutes are confidential. They're not to be shared. Some liaisons don't share them with their lobby teams. They just give them a summary of where the relationship with the member of Congress stands. And, we are pretty protective of that information, and I think it's for a good reason. It's because we know that if for whatever reason some of these meeting minutes ever got out, that we would ruin whatever trust we've built up with Congress. So we do keep those confidential. We ask that, once you get that email from the meeting with the notes, that you read through it, make sure that everything looks right, and then delete that email. We'll have the notes in our database, and we can always go back and access them later.
I love it. I gave you a little prequel there, but let's go over quickly the to be determined meetings as well. So those are basically going to show up on your schedule. And if you get a TBD, it essentially just means the appointment's not set yet. So TBD, to be determined. On your screen right now, you see an example schedule with the meeting marked as TBD, right? And if the meeting is marked as such, the meeting lead should contact the appointment setter, as indicated there, whose name and contact information are listed in that special notes section on the schedule. You can see by the green arrow. We don't ask that you take over for the appointment setter, but rather that you keep working with them to make sure that the meeting gets scheduled. So you can kind of be one more friendly reminder. One thing that we're going to throw out there to try to avoid is the 2 o'clock Eastern time zone time. That tends to be when we get the most of our meetings, and we want to try to avoid overbooking that. We also want to make sure to remind everyone that you can probably, this form here as an example doesn't show it, but TBD meetings are intentionally overfilled. So they often have much more than the 4, 5, 6 names even, because we know that when the meeting is finally scheduled, inevitably some of those people on the list are going to actually have conflicts with other meetings. So the remaining schedule for the rest of the team is displayed in that far left column of the schedule. So you'll know whether someone can attend the TBD meeting once it's confirmed. And that's a great feature to also kind of be able to winnow down who your team still can be. Once the meeting is confirmed, here's a couple of other things to keep in mind. And again, this won't apply to everyone, but if you do happen to have a TBD meeting assigned to you, it's important to remember that the leader needs to inform the other teammates by phone, email, and text. So we're going to ask you to do the trifecta of reminders to let them know. And why, you might ask, that we're expecting all 3? Well, 1, you can't depend on having good cell service in DC. That's just a foregone conclusion. The second of which, and I apologize here, my screen will resume sharing here in a little bit, is just basically making sure that you have the chance. Some folks don't text, right? I don't know if that's anyone also on the show tonight. But we want to make sure that you have the chance to let them know by email as well, just because if they don't text, that's another way to find out. So meet them where they're at, and if you're contacted by the team lead of another TBD meeting, make sure to respond ASAP, right? Kind of reciprocal relationship there. I'll pass it back over to you, Ricky.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, Brett, because I think as of today, Amy said, we're still probably 100 meetings left to be scheduled. So it's very likely that you're going to get your schedule and it's going to say you have a to be determined meeting in there. So again, just remember, the meeting lead should contact the appointment setter to try to help and see if there's any way they could assist, not to take over. And then really it's all about communication. Once that appointment setter gets the meeting set, you need to communicate with everyone that's listed on that meeting to see who can be there and at the appropriate time. So when you receive your schedule, there's one other thing you may notice, and that is something called a constituent call-in, right? And so in some situations, volunteers who aren't going to DC have talked to their group leaders, the liaisons, and said, hey, I would love to join by phone. And that's absolutely fine. So a constituent call-in will be noted on the schedule. And what we're asking here, if you're the team leader, is that you'll be the person that conferences that person into the meeting by phone. So once you get your schedule, if you see that there's a constituent call-in, you want to reach out to them to confirm their availability. Decide what role you wish them to play and when you will call them. Make sure to clarify and confirm the meeting time and the time zone differences as well. That can get confusing at times. And when the meeting starts, or even before the meeting starts, go ahead and dial them in. Go ahead and give them a call and make sure it's working. Here's the one thing I wouldn't say. Don't let trying to get a constituent on the phone dominate what you're trying to do before a meeting. If you tried once, you tried twice, you're not getting through, your reception is bad, whatever, drop it and move on. Don't let it disrupt your meeting, for sure. You can place them on the speakerphone, but we should on your speakerphone, but never ask if it's okay to use their phone. We don't want to ask if they offer it. That's a great to accept, but don't say, hey, can we use your phone for this? Their phones are pretty busy these days, so we shouldn't ask them to use theirs. Here's the important part, though. You know, it's difficult. You know, we have phone conversations, and you do try to do a phone conference call, especially got somebody on speaker. It's really hard. It's hard for the person on the other end of the line to know when to insert themselves. So it's up to you as a lead to involve them as appropriate. Again, you'll probably have to do those verbal cues in this situation, right? Because they're on the phone, so you'll just say something like, hey, you know, Gaylord is, you know, he introduced himself at the beginning of this meeting, and he's a constituent. Gaylord, did you have anything that you'd like to add at this point? You know, make sure you're, that sounded kind of awkward, but, you know, try to do whatever you can to get them involved. Make sure that you don't forget them. Again, self-service on Capitol Hill is really spotty, so don't get flustered by that if you can't connect. So cool. Let me just show you real quick. We promised to show you where a couple of things are located on CCL Community, and obviously where you can get these lessons too. So I think the easiest way to get our lessons, honestly, is to go to our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube, search for Citizens Climate Lobby. This is what our channel looks like. Notice there's this nice little red button over here to subscribe. So please subscribe. That will ding you and notify you by email as soon as any of our lessons or any of our content is published. You'll get a notification, so please do that. You can also go to iTunes, and I had my iTunes account up, but it was slowing down my service too much here on Zoom, so I apologize for that. But just go to iTunes if you got your phone and search for Citizens Climate Lobby, and you can always find our lessons there as well. And then on Community, here's our CCL Community page. This section we're showing you right here is our CCU training, and as you can see, the lessons are listed here, and you can really look at the most recent webinars, the ones that are there. So Advanced Lobbying, Lobbying 301, 201, and then if you need to find all the lobbying training, just go over to the left here into this little sub menu, click on Lobby Training. You could probably spend about a good week going through all the lessons that we have. The important thing is maybe pull out the lobbying series. A lot of this other stuff, especially as we get down to the lessons from the Congressional Management Foundation, a lot of these are like 5 or 6 minute little vignettes. And so they're really quick, you know, how to create an effective story, how to get your policy talking points into the member's office. Great stuff. In fact, Brad Fitch is going to be one of our speakers, the head of the Congressional Management Foundation at the conference. So last thing I want to touch on, because we are at the top of the hour, the Lobby Day Toolkit. So from the homepage of CCL Community, if you scroll down just a little bit past the great news about the Climate Solutions Caucus and get down to the third action item, you'll see this is Washington, D.C. Lobby Day Toolkit. When you click on that link, oh, I thought I already clicked on it. Whenever you're on Zoom, things move really slow, so sorry about that. I'm competing for resources here, but when you click on it, it's going to bring up this page. And Gaylord, this was, you know, when you talk about if you have folks who are new and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. First thing I would do is send them to this page. It's got all the resources they might need. It walks you through the step of how to prepare yourself. Certain laser talks that are prepared especially for the 2017 Lobby Day. The Top Topics tool, which is really cool. So this is a great place to go.